Okay. Oh, it started recording.
We could stop. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thursday, and welcome to our first, I believe, first webinar for 2026. First for the month of January. Today we're focusing on helping startups build scalable AI first businesses. Super excited to be partnered with Levuka Venture Lab on this webinar today, represented by Neil Sumaru, founder and CEO of Levuka Venture Lab. Really excited to introduce our all-star panel and to kick things off, Michaela Di Julio, who's our program manager based in Argentina, is going to be moderating our panel conversation today. So, Michaela, over to you. And in the
Thank you
meantime,
so much.
I'll spotlight everyone.
Perfect. Thanks so much for all, and thank you all for being here. Thanks to all the guests that have showed up from all over the world. If you want to start dropping your name, your country, where you're calling from on your LinkedIn, please do so we can all connect. So yeah, we're coming to an end. We are the first Founder Institute Caribbean cohort um, ever. So it's been a very exciting journey. And our graduation is actually next week. So we're going to close this great cohort with founders from not just the Caribbean, but all the way from here, Argentina. So it's Latin American and the Caribbean. And our idea is to provide expertise for our founders and for just curious minds in the field. And this time I really want to highlight, integrating AI and workflows, but Neil had some great findings on what's working, what's not working. So today I want to bring in the conversation into that because I know there's a incredible hype on AI building. And sometimes, workflows are not integrated correctly. Leadership is not there, governance, and like different aspects that we can take in consideration as we have this AI hype building. But before we go into all of that and we exchange, and I know I was just here, like we were all presenting each other and talking. I love for you guys to introduce yourselves to our audience. Tell us a little bit about, where your company, where you're based out, and what's been driving like your attention right now with AI integration in your field of expertise. So I'm gonna start with Andy because I have him right next to me. So Andy, go ahead, tell us about yourself. Thank you so much for being here. Andy has NachoNacho B2B marketplace. It's a B2B SaaS marketplace, which is incredible. And now, Andy, sorry, pass it on to you to introduce yourself.
All right. You said it better than I could. We're NachoNacho, the B2B SaaS and AI marketplace. So we get to work with a lot of the top new software products out there on the market. So every day I get to see a lot of the great AI tools coming to market. Primarily, my day-to-day role is managing all the marketing activities across the entire company. I'm a big fan of building AI tools into our product as well to enhance the experience for our customers. And then we do use AI quite a bit in our marketing efforts as well. You can check out what we do at nachonacho.com if you're interested.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Andy. And you've spoken to so many B2B SaaS founders, so you're like you bring all that together like a super connector, and then you bring that knowledge up to us. So you're gonna be like 10 people in one. Neil, pass it on to you. Neil is one of our Platinum partners, and he's been supporting us in our cohort. Super happy for all the energy, for all the guidance that he's brought us. So Neil, go ahead, introduce yourself to everybody.
Thank you, Michaela. Yeah, hi everyone. Neil Samaru. I'm the founder and chairman of Levuka Venture Lab. Appreciate everything we're all building, and the Caribbean and LATAM are obviously markets that we're very interested in. Levuka is domiciled in Dubai. We operate globally. We help organizations sort of build and engineer AI and blockchain technology. So we do work from everything from startup ecosystem founders to publicly traded companies, and we do everything from sort of multi-jurisdictional structuring, narrative building, and engineering architecture and financial sort of models to help companies sort of, incorporate AI technology and blockchain into their infrastructure. So yeah, really happy to be part of this conversation and support sort of these initiatives, because I think there's tremendous potential both in the Caribbean and throughout LATAM, and excited to be part of this early journey with Raul and what he's building.
Thank you so much for being here. And absolutely, this event is about, also talking about like merging worlds and understanding also the potential that is available in the Caribbean. We've seen it with our founders who are in edtech, in fintech. They're doing incredible things to change the world. So I'm super happy and excited to have been accompanying them all the while. So I'll pass it on to Diana Bernal. Diana, go ahead, introduce yourself, and thank you for being a trooper today.
Thank you, Mika. Hi, everyone. My name is Diana. I'm originally from Colombia. I've been moving a little bit around the world. So I actually studied in the States, then moved to China, where I started my career in the corporate space. Before launching my first startup, I actually raised funds. It was in the ed tech space. And so that really kind of like made me fall in love with the whole entrepreneurship space. I think I learned a lot about really the importance of seeing beyond the product itself and understanding how innovation can come from different parts of the business model, right? How you can, to some extent, try to accelerate your path to finding approaches that work at solving problems instead of taking, like an intuitive approach, which is how I think I was operating the first time I had a startup. So I then moved on to the consulting space, where again I was working with corporates in particularly who wanted to create new startup ideas, scalable business models in a short amount of time. So what excites me personally about AI really is how it basically allows us to go through that process maybe 100 times or 1,000 times faster, right? So I'm really interested in like trying to, again, as a founder, you're always somebody who has untested hypotheses, right? So how can we leverage AI to try to see again what of the things that we were guessing are actually correct, and then invest there instead of what used to be before, that you didn't have the resources or time to really try to consider different alternatives before committing into something in particular. So that's where I've been working most of the time, and where I've been really having fun with AI. So I look forward to sharing more about that. And yeah, it's been so great to be able to support founders. I think we've used AI with several of the founders as well in that particular space. So excited to share.
Thank you so much, Sienna. And that's what we'll be talking about today, how we're each integrating AI into what we do every day. So it's great to talk from that field, like firsthand expertise. I'm excited to hear about that. So Amar and Jasser, would you guys want to introduce, who wants, maybe Amar, you want to go first and introduce yourself, and then Jasser, since you guys are working together.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, guys, for the opportunity to come and talk to you guys. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Amar Hussain. I'm a founder of Horizon AI Consulting. We specialize and focus on AI, data and AI enablement. I spent over 2.5 decades in the industry, having worked with Google and with Microsoft. Having witnessed the various different hype cycles or different waves that have come from the cloud to mobile revolution, and right now in the AI revolution that we are going through right now. It's an interesting time out there, especially in the AI world right now. There's a bit of a gap forming in terms of what we are hearing and seeing in terms of hype versus what is the operational reality on the ground that I'm witnessing. We're having, working with global partners like HCL, Accenture, KPMG, PwC, in helping them realize that, look, AI isn't just a magic button that you press and things happen. This is the area that we're working with. We are also working on another startup between us, me and Yasser, very closely. We're building PredictStream. PredictStream is an AI native platform which leverages foundation models and LLMs to make sense of real-time event data. And so we're actually leveraging it right now to create value and to disrupt how things are done already, how things are being done. So I'm based in the UK. My colleague Yasser, he's based in Europe. He can give you an introduction, but that's just myself. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much. Jasser, you wanna go ahead?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Michaela and Amar and everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. My name's Yasser Arvid. I'm a data and AI professional with strong and extensive experience in data analytics, workflow automation, apps development, and building intelligent AI platforms. For the time being, I work as a senior data analyst for Accenture Services Poland. I'm based in Warsaw for the time being, where I had the opportunity to build, scalable data pipeline and reporting dashboards and building apps that has been used by over 300 employees across 9 teams. Simultaneously, at the same time, I had the opportunity to work for different startups such as Leverage AI, where we have built chatbots, generative AI apps, using LangChain, LangGraph, RAG, retrieval augmented generation, and different open AI tools. And recently, I had the huge privilege to join PredictStream as a senior leadership member, which is an AI-driven initiative that has the mission to shorten time to value. So we are trying to make sense of messy and raw data in a matter of seconds, not months, as the situation, the current situation. And I had also the privilege to join Founder Institute as a mentor. So I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all.
Thank you so much. We're glad to have you. Thanks for joining. Well, thank you everybody for joining. And I know you guys have been sending a lot of people from our guests have been sending questions. So just a reminder, we're going to have around 40 minutes or so of like exchange between all of us. And then if you guys have in the audience, if you guys have any questions, make sure to use the Q&A feature on the chat, or you can throw it in there, and then we'll invite you and like we'll unmute your mic and you guys can ask the questions yourself. So it's something that can be useful. This conversation has to be useful for all of us, because I know a lot of people that are listening are actually building too, and I know want to learn. So you guys are more than welcome. If you have questions, throw in the chat. If you use the Q&A app, even better. So I have everything in one place. But please write down whatever sparks up your your imagination. So I'm gonna start with I don't know where to start. I want to start with like everybody has a very different like field of expertise. At the same time, they all intertwine, but the part of like consulting more on like for example, Andy, you've built like a community and you speak with so many B2B SaaS founders. Diana, you're in the ed tech area too, and you work with funds. And then Amar and Jessar, you're like on like stealth mode building right now. And Neil, well, you're just yeah, well, I already just said it, but you're just a great expert. And actually, Neil just sent right before I was like preparing, he sent a great executive summary of why unlocking AI potential workflows and what's driving success and what isn't in AI adoption. And I want to go over some interesting, you call it Neil workflow traps. And I want to mention some of these workflow traps in the sense that some pitfalls that organizations might face when they're incorporating AI, right? Because, Neil, according to some of the findings by, I think it was McKinsey and MIT, a lot of organizations that are incorporating AI workflows are like not integrating them correctly. So one of them is having a model-centric mindset, right? Just creating this sort of like AI islands, demos that to incorporate it into the processes that are not very successful at the end. And I saw this working with, I used to be marketing director at an AI company here, and I saw this all the time. So how would you explain this effect of the AI islands on AI integration? Like, can you give us an example of what an
Yeah.
AI island would be?
Yeah, absolutely, Michaela. I can maybe simplify it. So, when we look at the data, what the data is effectively showing us from, MIT Sloan, CSAIL, a bunch of others, is that there's a lot of AI adoption. We're starting to see a proliferation of AI in companies. But what defines success is this is a new sort of, way to rethink workflows. So where people are seeing success is kind of like, looking at the research is in two areas. One is considering, AI to be bolted on to an existing workflow that was largely human centric, sort of puts the AI sometimes as just an accelerator of one component or even a bottleneck because people don't truly understand where AI should be augmented with human decision making. The human decision making factor is still really important. But what we advise is for people to take a step back and really consider that the impact is happening when you look at the operational spine of the company. The decisions concentrate around there, and then re-engineering the workflow first. So sometimes as an organization, we're moving very quickly and we create these islands because we implement AI into one component or vertical of our business without really considering if we were to re-engineer the entire organization with AI at its hub, what components is AI good at making decisions and what components do you need to augment human decision making, maybe for risk or compliance or just, providing validation. So when we talk about those islands, it's really because the impact that we're seeing from both the early research and Levuka's own sort of implementation. We build tech. We've got 40 engineers on staff in AI and blockchain. And so our practical experience aligns with what we're seeing from the top research data, which is the successful outcomes are when we rethink holistically, how would we re-engineer this workflow considering AI at the hub, and where is it important to augment human decision making? And that eliminates both creates sort of operational efficiencies that are scalable, eliminates bottlenecks where they shouldn't occur, and allows AI to be constrained because just having Copilot or ChatGPT or Claude, in your company doesn't really consider you AI enabled, right? There's much more power. And sometimes, and I'm sure Amr and Yasser would have much more to say on this matter, but constraining the parameters around how your models are trained is very important. More is not always better. So we try to take a holistic approach of re-engineering these things with AI at its hub to prevent those bottlenecks or prevent isolated incidents of AI controlling one aspect of something, which may or may not actually truly be efficient. So that's kind of holistically how we think about it, Michaela.
Perfect. I love that. And I'm going to open way to Amar. I mean, you worked in Microsoft, you work with big corporations trying to implement AI. What can you tell us about what Neil just said, and especially what if it's a large corporation and how this integration process, and what have you seen that is working when you're incorporating new AI workflows in these large corporations, and what hasn't worked? And then I'm going to make it even harder for you. How do you use that experience to build your own company? So let's start with like you going back to nostalgia and then you coming back to what you're building. And Jester, please call up on after.
Yeah, sure. Let me answer the first one. So what Neil was saying, I think, is hitting the nail on the head there. Is there's some really good points. The thing with getting started with AI is that you've got to pick the right problems to deal with, right? You've got to pick the right use cases, the right workflows in your enterprise where you think that AI can add value. I think what we're seeing right now in the industry, like when I've spoken to a lot of clients and a lot of if you read a lot of reports that are out there, people are talking about over 90% of AI pilots that are not really delivering value. I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to throw AI anything on the wall and hoping it sticks somewhere, right? And we can hope and deliver some value at the end of it. And I think it's very important that you get the use case right. You solve the right problem with AI, because if you don't, you are just going to be burning money. You're going to annoy the leadership. You're not going to be a popular person in the organization. You might have a limelight for first initial few months, or 6 months or so. But then if the ROI is not coming back and if you're not delivering results, fingers are going to be start pointing at you, and there'll be a lot of there'll be things to explain over there. That's the first thing. The second thing is when we do pick a use case, or when we do pick flows, we pick the most complex flows and use cases that are out there in your company. You don't want to be doing that, right? You want to pick up things that you can augment to start with. That's where the technology is right now. The technology is not there to completely remove the human from the loop. We don't advocate that. I don't really, guide enterprises, organizations to build completely autonomous systems unless there's a very compelling reason that is the right way to go. The advice is really not to over-engineer things. Start with augmentation, and augmentation means human plus AI, not the other way around. Not AI alone doing things, because it's from what you hear, you might hear you can do, agents that can pick up an order, that can go and order the food for you at the restaurant and have it delivered at your house. They might be delivering it to you at your previous apartment in Spain or in some other place that you had before, right? Because you haven't updated the system of records. So that's the second thing that needs to be looked at, I think. And then the couple of other things is people, there's a lot of obsession about models. I think, Neil, you mentioned this as well, like having the best and the biggest model out there. I think we need to move away from that. Stop picking models and start picking the right workflows that you need to automate or that you can augment. That's what I would say. And, also think about, and to be honest with you, a lot of it, it's not really technical. It's really change and cultural also, because we're not ready yet to be taking on this level of automation or this level of integration that's into an organization. So that's what I would say. I mean, I think those are some of the things that stick out to me. As for the second question you were saying, what I was doing was when we came up with PredictStream as a platform is, while I did my work with a lot of the engineering staff and developers and engineers and architects, especially on the machine learning aspect and data engineering aspect, I realized that we were doing a lot of pipelines and we were doing a lot of manual way of processing and cleaning that data. And then it was taking far too long to get value from that data. And that's what I saw an opportunity with PredictStream to say, look, can we build something which reduces the gap between when data is picked up or when the data comes into contact to when you can use AI to deliver predictions from that data? And so that's where PredictStream came from, really from the experiences and the challenges and the pain points that I saw from the people that I was working with and the people that I was training and enabling. So that's just just to give you a bit of insight in terms of where that came from. I'll stop.
Sure. Amazing. Great answer, and I love that. To keep, especially to incorporate leadership also, to understand leadership has to be involved when workflow integration and the process very human centric too, especially when you're starting small, right? Not starting complex. Andy, talking about complex, you have a very complex task because you're constantly like uniting people from all over the world to come to your events. How do you use AI as a super connector yourself and to like for event coordination, for everything? It's a B2B SaaS marketplace. So how do you do all of this to keep it cohesive, your ecosystem? Like if you can give us some tips as a super connector.
Yeah, in terms of community building, in a lot of ways, I try to stay away from AI for that particular instance. Just like the other panelists mentioned, I think AI is, not a replacement necessarily. It's a productivity enhancer, but if you rely on it too much, sometimes there's a threat there that you might overdo it. So a lot of times, for instance, I get cold emails from people that are completely automating their entire marketing workflows, where I'm getting emails that just are not even relevant to me at all. So it becomes a really, kind of a bad vibe there. I might use some AI in terms of like lead list generation for invites to the events. But outside of that, I like to keep it, fairly human centric. So when I'm inviting people, I like to kind of write the emails myself, make sure that they actually look like a human wrote them. And one of the reasons why we do the in-person events for building community is that, a lot of people do get tired of the online automation and a lot of these tools, which can be effective and valuable if you use them the right way. But people just want to get back in person and meet each other in real life. And if you create an experience, both from how they hear about the event to the in-event experience, you really walk away with people feeling like they felt like they're a part of something and build some real relationships from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, well, I also did a lot of community building and marketing, and I'm an organic marketing freak and I write everything. And, but like for me, it's also insane. I do feel like we are saving some time in other tasks, which gives us more time to connect authentically and come together, right? And meet in person. So it's also enhancing that human side when we have more time to, to optimize other processes. So absolutely. Diana, you're very much involved in the ed tech sector. I know you're working in China on some projects. And we are talking about, ensuring that human critical thinking remains at its top, priority when we're integrating this. Um, how do you see on ed tech, right? And AI integration? How do you keep human critical thinking at its top notch and ensure that that's not lost on the process of integrating AI? I don't know if that's kind of understood the question, but
I think so. I think it can connect a little bit in general, like with innovation as well, because I think that part of the education space, what I think it's like key that we don't lose is our innate tendency to grow. I think that's something that all humans have. I am a bit of like a humanistic in that sense, but I think that humans want to learn and humans want to understand and grow, and I think that it's not that people don't want to learn, it's just that now it's very, very easy to skip the learning. And so I feel like one of the greatest dangers there is perhaps relying on AI, right, to give you the answers without you really understanding the logic behind it. So I think that's also one of the dangers in education itself, right? Kids trying to get the solutions for the exams and then submitting that, right? At the same time, I think that AI is a huge enabler for education. I think that, I feel like the fact that the access to expert knowledge is getting close to zero, right? Is something that can be super disruptive in terms of like innovation, meaning, the time it takes you now to understand the problem space is much less than it could have before. Like for you to before enter a new market, if you wanted to study something in particular, you had like a very, very long time frame before you could actually start to have your own opinions. And so I think that's the key, right? Like you want to use AI to form your own opinions instead of having AI like give you answers. And so in that sense, I guess like when it comes to innovation, it's the same thing, right? Like you can be the kid that asks ChatGPT to give you the answers for the exam, or you can be the kid, right, that has a framework. Like again, I'm very interested in entrepreneurship frameworks. Like I think Steve Blank and customer development and strategizer, I've talked about it before in other sessions, have really kind of like increased the chances of success in entrepreneurship. And really what they are frameworks, right? They're prompts, basically they're the ultimate prompts in my opinion that you can give an AI to get an understanding of a market, right? So instead of asking AI like, hey, give me a new idea, right? You want to tell AI, look, I found this problem. I have this insight, right? This person is not able to solve this problem because of X or Y or Z. Right now, I want you to help me understand the market, like what players are out there, right? What has been tried before? Like you want to be able to form your own opinions. And so I think that also connects to education, right? I think that we're going to see kids like are being able to engage in much more serious things at an earlier stage. And I think that's what we want to encourage from an educational perspective, right? Like if even with VR and all these things, like kids are no longer limited by their physical abilities, right? They can start to learn things that would perhaps before have been dangerous for them to engage in, right? So I think it's
yeah.
opening a lot of possibilities, and I'm optimistic in regards again of our tendency to want to learn and grow and apply. And so I go in that path. But I guess yeah, it comes down to retaining the human, you yourself, retaining yourself in the logic, in the strategy, and not really outsourcing that to the AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that even you yourself, like setting the framework and like, becoming the author of that type of methodology, which was used before AI came along, we were the ones that came up with those frameworks. We're the ones that had that like original kind of like thought and they like become authors of it. But yeah, I agree completely. And in our cohort we have a strong ed tech focus actually. Michael, he's building something where, fourth grade math can be adapted into like four different styles of cognitive thinking. So kids can solve problems just like also visually if they don't get it in with numbers. And then we have another founder that's really active in digital accessibility. So you see, people using technology and AI too in this positive sense. So, Diana, another question for you. You've worked with educational systems in China, in Barcelona, and also in Latin America. How do your experience with AI, workflow automation, and education, these three areas? Can you like tell us like who's falling behind, who's forward, things that you've noticed working with these three very different geographic landscapes?
Yes, I guess my main advice that I have to founders is that because it's so easy to build a solution now, like I feel like there is a lot of solutions out there competing on the same value props, so I think that you clearly have, like, I'm a big fan of Khan Academy, for instance, that they have been integrating AI since or at least in the digital space, teaching, right? And you have other schools in the US like Acton Academy that again also have been sort of like building frameworks that utilize and leverage AI, like as part of like letting the kids learn themselves. And so there's a lot of like efforts in regards to how to adopt AI. Like you mentioned, we have very interesting startup ideas even within the Founder Institute program, right? That all are kind of like trying to come up with different approaches to how to learn. What I think it's key there is to really not rush into over optimizing a particular solution. And instead, I think, like Amar said, like try to really map out the process, the workflow, right? So if you want to say, hey, in education, like a lot of the times the problem hasn't been solved yet, right? Like if people struggle to learn something, it's because there's something that's making it difficult for them to learn it, right? So if you want to create a startup that's to help them learn that, like you have to have a strategy behind, like how is your approach different than what has been tried before, and based on that then come up with a proposal that can be disruptive, right? So instead of like incremental, I don't know, let's say for instance I'm thinking about like ADHD or other like or other solutions that are emphasized for these type of students. Like maybe the logical solution is like a platform that takes into account their own unique perspectives, but at the same time maybe the solution is a podcast with music that the tunes just really kind of like get the ADHD calm down, right? And that's not an approach that's like the first thing that comes to mind. And so I feel like, again, like the education often comes, like people think of like massive online courses, right? Or they think of like very obvious solutions. And so like my suggestion or my idea would be to try to push beyond that and see like what can you do differently that leads to that type of result. And so, yeah, that would be my answer. Mika, I don't know
Perfect.
if
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, going niche and like specific problems to solve and adding
One,
that value add. Perfect. Amar,
yeah,
you had your hand up, and then I'm gonna go to Jasser. Had a question.
Yeah, thanks, Raquel. Yeah, just the point that Dana was just raising about building something which is unique. The thing is that's really interesting right now, and I can give you some from our experience as well, is how much do you build, right? And the reason why I say that is that the the speed at which foundation models and where AI is going so fast that when you build something, it won't take long for one of the big LLMs or big foundation models to come and eat it up, right? So they already build that capability inside their own agent or in the AI. The AI will be able to do it, right? So yeah, let's say, for example, if you wanted to build a platform for online learning, well, you just go to Gemini or you just go to one of the models, and they have AI mode, a learning mode on there, right? So here's your mode that's been eaten up by the big players that is coming and eating you up. So you've got to
Yeah.
think about how do you get stickiness into your product that you're building. And in my opinion, I think there's a couple of ways on how you can build that stickiness. One is through workflow depth, so deep vertical domain knowledge and understanding about a specific subject or an area that you want to specialize in. So let's say, for example, healthcare or medical or something that's specifically niche to your strength or to what you've done or your chosen subject. And so you build deep vertical integration into that, which then creates a stronger moat for you than having something which can be easily been taken on as a wrapper from one of the big models, for example. So the decision that founders need to make, and they need to constantly be thinking about, is what do I build? How far do I build this thing, and what do I do? Because the flip side of it is that you could build something, you could be building a engineering feature in your product stack, which you no longer need to spend hundreds of hours and cycles of engineering building that, because something is already built for you off the shelf that you can pick up and use, right? But also think about, well, if they're building this fast, how sticky is my solution that I'm building? Do I have proprietary context, right, that I can add into that moat? Do I have proprietary, like a specific workflow that I will specialize in and go really deep on? Those are the things that will protect you from a moat perspective. So I just wanted to add that in there, linking it
Yeah,
back
for
to what Emma.
sure. Definitely finding your mode is key, and understanding who your ICP is. Very, 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 very much so, and like understanding what problem you're solving, and your values and everything. That so it just doesn't just become a tool that Gemini could just incorporate. Andy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to double down on that. He's exactly right. Either, find that niche focus and, 100% vertically integrate there. So you're the best of the best for that particular niche. Another thing I see a lot of founders do is their AI features masquerading as companies. So again, to his point, they're literally just we're QuickBooks with AI. If you're starting to pitch your company that way, it's already kind of a losing battle, because a lot of these large companies, as mentioned before, have access to the same technology and will probably roll out that feature. So the other way you could look at it too, if you're not going vertical and going very niche, which is a great point, you could look at, because of artificial intelligence, what new opportunities it will exist now because of this technology that didn't exist before. And in that category, you might find some blue oceans as well too. I do see a lot of great AI companies coming out, for instance, that are more of an infrastructure play. So that's always a great way to create a moat, right? If you get a lot of partnerships and a lot of AI applications running on you, you got stickiness for your product. So don't run into the problem where you think you're going to be the Uber with AI or the QuickBooks with AI, because that's an easy to replicate business by these larger companies that have a lot more resources than you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to pass into Jasar. Jasar, you have a very technical background on your senior data and scientist and AI engineer, and you've worked with Accenture, which is huge. And according to your profile and everything, you've reduced significantly, coordination overhead costs and increased user satisfaction. And all the manual reporting that was done with your workflows, you've also reduced it. Can you like walk us through a specific workflow that you've had to solve, and how you've integrated and how you did it? Maybe I don't know if you did some reporting. Of course, you did some reporting first, and like how you fixed all of that and you gave those great results specifically on a use
Absolutely,
case.
absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the, I would say, the cases that it's worth mentioning, that had actually a massive disruptive effect is automating the content moderation workflow. So for our one of our clients, which is one of the biggest social media platforms, where, as you know, content is generated by users, with tremendous amounts every second. And every image or video that it's, published by the users globally has to be moderated. We have to, to detect, harmful content into the videos or the images, and that's unfortunately has have been done for several years manually. So a human content moderator will check, all images, all videos, and he will detect, the harmful content manually. So the process looked very monotonous, repetitive, very slow, because humans are really slow, in detecting harmful content in videos. And also they are prone to error. They cannot, spot every violation, in the video or the image. So they are prone to error. They are really slow. The turnaround time is very high, and they cannot keep up with the speed of the cognitive load, because the users are generating massive, content every minute. So me with the technology team within Accenture Poland, we came up with the idea 2 years ago to basically automate and implement AI into the whole workflow. So the idea was like, to prototype and to use YOLO model by Ultralytics. The model was created for object detection. So whenever we have a video, an image, the model will detect every object, if it's, I don't know, a cup or a cigarette, or I don't know. So it has to detect everything that is in the image. But we went far into fine-tuning the model into by, using Coco dataset, to detect only harmful content, cigarette, alcohol, a weapon, something like that, rather than detecting everything. And I built a Streamlit app, to do real-time monitoring, and I provided to the, to the personals. And for the time being, we are in the, into the A/B testing. We are sort into the pilot stage. We got the green light, to implement it, and it's piloted now. We have created a new team that are getting more and different tasks. Rather than moderating items and videos, they are more into annotating, the videos, into more giving and trying to validate or, decline, the decision proposed by the model. So that's what we are doing. And for the time being, we have achieved, almost real time, moderation, because the, AI can do it very fast. The accuracy is very high. It's not prone to error. And speed. It's all about, dealing with all the huge data that we're having every second, to do it, without having any, data left for tomorrow. So I think that's the one that I wanted to point out. There are many, but this is the most disruptive one.
Okay, yeah, it's a big strain to be a content moderator in these platforms. I've had friends that done it, and it's incredible. It's people that, communicators, or like people specialized in like social studies, that have to constantly watch harmful content. So it's very it's a big psychological strain. So thank you so much for doing that and helping so many human beings taking care of the mental health of so many human beings with that. So great. Thank you so much for incorporating that. That's a great solution. Neil, going back to what we were talking about, um, how do you, I mean, ROI measurement is kind of like very reductionist, but like how do you measure when an AI workflow is successful and when it's not? Like what maybe 4 points that you can observe for that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I think there's a couple of things, right? If we look at sort of success metrics, they're pretty easy to measure. If these AI workflows are re-engineered properly, for example, we have stuff that we do with agentic voice that pre-qualifies, right? So it might be, there's an example I shared in the document I shared with you earlier, Michaela, about something we're doing in the mortgage space. Now, the rationale around it is it's a very simple workflow, but you would think that an agentic voice pre-qualifying a potential mortgage candidate would receive resistance. Well, in fact, we're working with a mortgage company in 2 countries, actually a few different, but we have this deployed in Australia and in Canada. We're noticing that when the agentic voice is actually interacting with the client, it's closing at a 70 to 80% success rate, way higher than individuals. Now, that's a lot of that comes down to how it's engineered, how the constraints are put, around the model. So those become very measurable. But I think there's something important here that came out of the earlier conversation I just want to touch on as well. Something that Diana brought up and Yasser, pointed out that when we look at sort of, and I think this ties into how we think about success around AI, the offloading of cognitive load onto AI, it's showing that people that do that, and this is again research from MIT and top institutions, that, there's a decrease in 40 to 50% of neuronal activity when the cognitive load is offloaded to AI for decision making. Now, what happens in those cases is the human user is achieving faster results, but they've now offloaded their ability to think to an AI agent. So when we talk about sort of identifying what the learning apparatus is, part of this fundamentally comes down to how we understand reason, knowledge, and things like that. And as a human being, there are certain things that AI can accelerate in terms of giving us input or giving us a decision. But if we stop treating it as a cognitive sparring partner where the human still understands that, as Amr said, that deep vertical specific knowledge, right? If we're outsourcing our discernment to the AI engine to provide results without considering the fact that now our neuronal capacity has decreased. It's not that people are getting dumber, it's that those parts of the brain are not firing and they're not remembering what they even copied and pasted out of AI. So the end result seemingly looks good, but to solve these problems in a more holistic light, we have to think about, I think, we have to think about what are we solving for? More people that, treat AI as a cognitive sparring partner to create better outcomes, or more people that defer their cognitive load to it, forget how to use their own. And then, we're almost like moving down this slippery slope that becomes catastrophic. So when we talk about results, right, there's these short-term results, which are very quantifiable, which are things like, hey, I implemented this AI workflow. My calls that were picked up resulted in a 70% close. We refied 2 mortgages. We're doing more money, in terms of revenue. The long arc of it, though, is I feel as early builders in these spaces and, as a bunch of founders on this call that are, really passionate about these ideas and how we build new models, part of our responsibility is to really think about how this is, to me, and I think the panelists would agree, this is more generationally changing than the internet was. Because this is the first time we've had a reasoning engine at our helm, right? So we have to think that comes as early builders and pioneers in the space that are taking, these agentic tools and models and now finding commercial applications and how do we build that moat. We also have a sense of responsibility that comes with that, right? And that responsibility to me is human as well as sort of commercial. And I think balancing those things is important, right? So we take a practical approach. We try to think about how to re-engineer those workflows so that we can qualify and quantify what the results are in terms of, the business mechanics, the commercial structure. But I think it's very important to point out that we don't want to ignore the sort of responsibility we have as human beings, right? And that is sometimes, I think, overshadowed by quick results. So I know that's important to us when we think about these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Neo. And there's a lot of incredible points that you have, and I want to go over governance too, and I want to go over new regulations that are being put in place to ensure that humanity doesn't get lost without critical thinking. And we'll go back to that because I absolutely agree. And I mean, I work with AI constantly. Claude, I always say he's my buddy. And but it's true that we have to, and I sometimes I challenge. I think something interesting to do is always to constantly challenge AI and constantly challenge the answer, like to have a discussion with it and exchange with it to keep your own and yeah, and to also find ways to constantly increase your critical thinking um, away from that process. So yeah, that's very, we need to be very ethical on how we use it for our own like cognitive sense too, not just in an ethical sense of like, privacy and these things that we already know, but not wasting our, our 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 skills, our cognitive skills. So I'm gonna go back to a question that's Andy, you just threw in there some great resources on tools that you use and that you have in your marketplace. AI is wonderful. So we have Gamma, the tech. Can you tell me a little bit about like what your favorite tools are? And like, if there are any founders here that are pre-seed or just building that you recommend for them.
Yeah, definitely. So one I just used recently myself was Gamma app to pump out a presentation pretty quickly. But if you start with a good framework, which again comes back to understanding rather than just having the AI do all the work for you, I built the framework for the content I wanted. I fed that into ChatGPT with basically a script to, make this PowerPoint script, Gamma app enabled. Give me a good prompt for that. So basically, I was able to dump that into Gamma app and create a 15-page PowerPoint presentation pretty quickly. But it all started with the content I gave it, right? So that's one of the really important things about AI. It's only as good as the inputs that you give it. So that's why it's really important to really understand at a strategic level what you're actually giving it. So knowledge is power. So never lose that skill. Um, Another one we use is Spiky. We record all of our meetings with Spiky. That will summarize and do all the note taking and pumps that right into our CRM. So right within HubSpot, we can see the summary of every meeting. That just helps us, as we're closing deal flow, we can go back in time and get that summary of every conversation we've had with a customer. So again, it comes down to AI not being a replacement, but a productivity enhancer. So instead of us trying to remember everything in the conversation, we get those key bullet points and takeaways that we can make strategic decisions on much more quickly. Um, Another really cool tool we use is Custom GPT. It's a product we build directly into our website, connects with 100 other APIs, and essentially it allows you to come up with your own custom GPT models. So what we've set up is a chat bot that can interact with a collection of data from our site. So it's very customized, and that provides a better customer experience overall. So people could ask about their account, they could ask about products in the marketplace. Again, it gives a much better customer experience because people are able to get, very personal, hyper personalized answers very quickly because we're using a tool like this. Um, Another tool I'd recommend for people looking to build their own AI tools is Pickaxe or another one of our partners. They allow you to create your own AI tool sets, uh, agentic AI tools as well. You could either plug those into your platform or you could sell those as independent products. That's another one I would use too. Lastly, I would say Opus Clip. I do a lot of webinars, and I used to have to go through the webinar and look for key points. It would take a lot of time to do all the editing and everything correctly. But with Opus Clip, you could pull out a bunch of clips, short clips, really quickly from a webinar. It'll smartly and more or less correctly pick out the right points in the webinar to create a clip from. It takes a little bit of human in the loop to kind of verify it got the right points there. But it takes something that would have taken an hour to do easily. You could do that in less than 10 minutes now if you do it the right way. Um, but again, AI is a great productivity enhancer, not a replacement. So keep the human in the loop. Don't rely on everything for AI to do all the thinking for you. Just to second and triple down on what everybody else said.
Yeah, absolutely. But these tools are great, and Andy, it brings me to something, like especially like Raw launching Founder Insta Craving, all of us working together on it. Me coming from Argentina, and like I do feel that AI has brought something very positive. That I feel like now founders from all over the world are like they have more accessibility to these tools and therefore they can grow more rapidly, they become more competent. There's still a humongous digital breach to cut, but can you guys like tell me what you think about this and like in the optimistic sense? Do you think that have you seen like other areas that, the digital breach go like just become shorter with this and are we closing this digital breach with AI as founders from all over the world may have more accessibility to these tools? Or are you on the other spectrum that you think that no, it's just getting broad, more and more broad, and we see a huge difference when there's a huge hype and knowledge in AI, and then other areas of the world, we still have a lot of work to do. Like, how do you guys see it? If you want, I'll start with Diana. How do you see it in the more optimistic sense or some more pessimistic? What's your take on it?
I am very, very optimistic, Mika. Although I also want to be realistic, and I guess if we zoom out perhaps a little bit, I think it's important to acknowledge that AI will indeed bring a lot of chaos and disruption because we're just not ready for the level of change that it's going to bring and maybe the next 1 or 3 years, right? What how we used to work, there's a lot of things that can change, and because of that, I think that there would be a period of time where it's going to be a little bit chaotic. That said, I think that before and after things will be much brighter. So I think that first of all, we should be doing more to sort of like start dealing with that, with the concept of okay, what are people going to do in the future when a lot of the things that we used to do are now done by AI. That said, again, I think that it's not clear where these leaders are going to come from, right? And that's where the biggest opportunity comes for developing countries. I think that, nowhere like in history had it been possible for like a unicorn to be born in a developing country. It just wasn't possible because the majority of the businesses of the past require scarce resources, right? They required you to have like bananas to ship over, and they required you to have things and you couldn't really make value out of nothing. And so now I think what changes is that you can, right? So you can again learn how to use these models. And I also think something that's changing that's contributing to this is that before you had to learn how to work with computers. And I think now like the biggest change that we're seeing is like the computers are learning to work with us, right? So the gap in that sense is also bridging is getting closer in regards to the difficulty to build right now. Again, whether we will, I just know that it's not going to be easy, and in particular because again there's not enough investment and there's not enough effort in rethinking like how we're going to deal with this as a society, and because of that globally I think it's going to be chaotic in the sense of like what do we do now. But that said, again, like I feel like the top players could come out of anywhere, like we have no idea where they're going to come from, and that's basically because of it's getting easier to compete against companies that used to have monopolies, or if you find the right approach and again you manage to stay alive and continuously reinvent your business model and the value you offer to your clients.
Yeah, I agree too. I agree too. And also we have, it's not just AI, it's connectivity too, in a sense that sometimes even with AI workflow integration, we can learn from the people, like developed countries can learn from the countries that have like, committed those mistakes or and when workflow integration and with AI incorporation. So I think that's a huge and talking about that, I'm gonna comment to like two different themes and then I'm gonna open the floor because I've been receiving some questions and also invite guests to throw in their questions. But Founder Institute really caters to like early stage founders. Do you guys think, and here I'll leave the floor to whoever wants to answer, that early stage founders have an advantage when it comes to AI workflow integration than like maybe big corporations because they're like, the digital, like you're a solopreneur, so you're a lightweight with everything. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, Michaela, I think the advantage goes back to what we were starting the conversation with. When you're a um, established enterprise with established workflows and a staff of, 40, 50, 100 people, it's really hard to stop everything and re-envision what the workflow looks like. So I think the strategic advantage that early stage founders have is they get to engineer their model from day one with AI at the helm, right? Or the core of it. They get to determine where the human augmentation happens and where it's sensible to do so, both commercially, but also, for those sort of, responsible considerations that we talked about. So I think there's a tremendous advantage to building a company right now in this AI sort of, with the momentum with AI, because you're not constrained by these larger organizations that have to now slow down, think about their workflows being, legacy for 40, 50, 100 years with humans involved, and then re-engineer it and then, push that out and get adoption. So, this is a really important time where I think smaller organizations that become more AI centric faster are going to actually be able to create more volume, more velocity, more revenue faster, and actually leapfrog legacy competitors in the space. But it comes down to sort of, to some comments that were made earlier, I think, by Amr or Yasser, you want to really think about what that workflow you're engineering is, right? Because if you focus your time and effort in the wrong area, it could also sort of, you could be chasing something that's not commercially viable. So, there is some pause for consideration, but I would say there is a tremendous strategic advantage to early stage founders not being limited by legacy workflows and human interactions.
Yeah, I agree. I agree too. Absolutely. And that's also one of the advantages of like building something of your own now, especially because we've seen AI in the works and we've seen a lot of like this AI hype sort of like wind down because a lot of companies that, it was the AI hype. Everybody was building with AI and you thought that just because you had Lovable, you could build your own company, but there's a big difference in building a company and, building an MVP. So yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, it's like you're more lightweight. Um, so I'm gonna just ask one last question on governance, on AI. Um, and then Neil, going back to you too, like with this, what are some regulations that, especially in the EU, that you think are gonna really set like set path to ensure that, just the data and like governance is done like correctly, and that also that when we build and we integrate workflows, we ensure that there's ethical and safe use, and also the information comes from viable source. What governance acts can you like talk about to like everybody like that's coming up, especially in Latin America? I think that governance and ethical use is not very like it's something that's coming up now, and for me, it's really important. Also coming from the EU AI Act. If you can tell us a little bit about that and how you think it's going to be integrated on a global scheme.
Yeah, sure, Michaela, happy to. So sort of to think about it on a more macro context, right? Because that's where it sort of is going to push this governance down. Europe in general, the EU has always had a more regulatory safe model, but that makes them a little bit less innovative, right? So we know that they're going to have safe sort of governance considerations as they have in the past, but it makes it harder to more constrained to move quickly in those environments. I think that it's still very early because when we're seeing things going on in the markets right now, and I think sometimes the markets tell us where confidence is being priced. We're seeing things in terms of like AI sovereign stacks in markets like China that aren't being priced, are being priced aggressively. Capital is being allocated there, but they're not being allocated because the tech is better than US tech. It's because some of these regions, right, and use ASEAN and China as an example, they're pricing the consideration that these sovereign stacks and the resources, the compute, the processing power. If you're reliant on providers outside of your ecosystem, that becomes priceable risk. So, it's still very early, and on a very macro level, we're seeing AI governance decisions being funneled into the UN Security Council, right? So there's so many layers of concern here, from ethical concern to governance to structural, right? And then we're getting indicators of how the markets are looking at this. And so without sort of boiling the ocean, looking at sort of, what's going to happen, because we don't have a crystal ball, if we look at those macro level indicators and think about what an emerging market like the Caribbean or LATAM are going to have to compete with, I think they're going to have to start to think about where these resources, right? Like if we're using uh, an AI agent or a company to build our AI or our technology, what are going to be the constraints, right? Like Silicon Valley has always had a build it now and ask for forgiveness later model. That's US centric, even in the capital markets. EU has taken a much more regulatory approach traditionally. And obviously, we're seeing a very multi or a polarized sort of initiative. The U.S. wants zero multipolar governance, and China is pushing absolutely for multipolar governance for different reasons, right? So I think emerging markets have to pay attention to these macro signals, because they don't, like, it's much like infrastructure, like GPS, right? It's not conceivable to have an aerospace program and put satellites in space if you're a small Latin American country. So these early macro indicators are going to tell us what's going to govern it. I think, like, it's important to, it's hard to answer the question like country to country or region to region. So I would pay attention to those macro signals and then work, within sort of with advisors or consultants that can help if there is a commercial risk, right? So when we engineer as a founder, if you think about what you're building as technology or your platform or whatever your company is, if we don't want to solve for problems we don't have, right? So we have to think about, like, what are we building? What are the actual problems? Because if we don't need like GDPR governance on our data, why would we incorporate that? Right? So I think, like, it's I think the governance standards and how we move around them are really based on the needs of the project. And then you can make very strategic decisions in terms of where the project is domiciled or resides, sometimes to meet those compliance, because we don't want to be non-compliant. But there's very progressive regions, like one we're in, like Dubai and UAE, because they are very favorable for these types of initiatives. So I don't know if I answered your question directly, Michaela. It's a tough one to
Very
answer
much
because
so.
there's
Yeah.
so many nuances right now at play. But I think it's important to be vigilant.
Yeah, yeah. And understanding, like, I always understand your ICP, understand your market, like all of that is super, super important, and how you're building it. The infrastructure and, like, and also just all of that is super important, how you're going to build your own process. Sometimes, like, a lot of our founders have started with one idea and have noticed that and pivoted completely because of their market and the market needs and how they're building, and they've questioned and reevaluated everything. So I absolutely agree. But it does help sometimes being Latin American, and, like, when you have like foresight of what what other their surrounding areas are doing, it helps a lot. It's like a big advantage in a way.
Well, and
So
Michaela, one point that you just made me realize too is, sometimes not being pre-committed to the big players in the room, the gorillas, also gives you flexibility, right? So these emerging regions sometimes have a little bit more flexibility on how they want to move and pivot within those governance structures. So I think it's also important as founders and ecosystem builders to be advocates for those things within our local, infrastructure, because we can shape these policies, we can shape the direction now.
yeah, yeah, I agree. Thank you so much for that, Neil. It was really enlightening. And well, we have a lot of questions. Michael, one of our founders, just like throwing all these questions in the chat. Michael, you're great. So well, I'm gonna close the session and have any closing remarks. Just go around of what you want to leave with. There are founders in the call. This will be also on YouTube. Just like one main lesson on AI workflow integration, or anything you want to leave the audience with. And I'll start with you, Andy. Um, Last words, And then we'll go actually not the last words because then we have questions from the panel, but just closing this session and going back to our audience.
Yeah, I guess always the point I keep coming back to is AI is a productivity enhancer, not a replacement. So any experience you have with AI, just think about it that way. Make sure that you're in control of the decision making. As Neil mentioned, you're in the driver's seat. Just use AI as a rocket fuel. So just keep that in mind.
Love that. Thank you so much, Andy. And thank you so much for all the tools. All of you guys like visit Andy's site, NachoNacho, and there's so many great tools. And Andy, we didn't have enough time to like speak about, you've spoken to so many SaaS founders, so all that expertise that you have is great, and it's very niche and it's not found very like in a lot of places. So yeah, I'm glad that you could be here. They turned on the light because it was getting dark here. I can see my face now.
Yeah, just mark here too. So.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Amar, what do you want to say any last? Oh, thank you, Inga. Thank you for being here, Inga. Amar, do you want
Yeah,
to say
well,
any last words for founders?
it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I think just a couple of things for founders out there, just to keep in mind when they're building their platforms or when they're looking to, get the startups or ventures going. You've got to think about the continuity question. Think about, vendor lock-in. Try to avoid total vendor lock-in because AI providers are, it's a very moving target. They can triple their price or go dark tomorrow, or can you still go on and function your product as a result of that? The other thing is the coordination side of things. Um, is your platform or your product or your venture actually, helping deliver real impact and real value for the end client, for the business? Is there a net productivity gain that's happening as a result of that? And then does your system get smarter every time a human corrects it, or are we just, how is the system iterating? What's the feedback loop question that you ask yourself? And then finally, the why question: are you solving a actual business problem, or are you just doing innovation for the sake of innovation? So yeah, I'll just leave you with those four key thoughts.
It's a lot to think about, but I love that. Thank you so much, Amar. Just there any last words for, not last, but anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
Absolutely, absolutely. I just would like also to highlight that AI is just an amplifier. He's not gonna replace a human in any way, and because they have certain and different, skills. Because AI is so good, into finding patterns into data and into predicting into the test data. But the human skills are unique. Talking about emotional intelligence, talking about critical decision making. So we are moving so fast, now that we are talking about agentic workflows where they can have the ability to make autonomous decisions, which is, I believe, we have to treat agents as like, junior employees, but they have, where they have just, for a junior employee to think twice, for an AI agent, he has to escalate it for a human to take the decision. So for critical decision making, I don't know, like he can, the agent can plan, the trip, but at the end of the day, when it arrives, to the credit card, I have, as a human, to make the final word and the final decision. Lastly, I would like to emphasize the governance aspect, talking about implementing frameworks that foster uh, responsible and ethical use of AI. AI for good, this is crucial and essential. We have to enhance, transparency and fairness, and also mitigate bias. And yeah, AI for good, responsible and ethical AI, and we're gonna make history.
I love that. We're gonna make history for sure. And Andy, yes, but interns are also need to be because they need to learn. So I have a critical thinking on that. Okay, Diana, go ahead.
Thank you, Mika. I guess my finishing thought would be here that I guess we tapped on this before in the conversation, Neil. You for sure mentioned it. I think that as a startup, your number one advantage is that you are not supposed to be executing on an existing business model. Your role as a startup is to search for a scalable business model. So my tip or my invitation would be to not rush to commit to a business model. I think in the very beginning, what you want to do is instead think more like a VC in a portfolio of ideas, right? So again, instead of thinking that in 6 months you will have one solution with 7 different features, try to have in 6 months a process where instead of trying to invest everything in one idea, you spend 3 months on 5 different ideas, right? And then after those 3 months, you see which one gets feedback, positive feedback and adoption from the market. You further refine that. And then 6 months, 9 months from now, you are in a place where you have a business model that's getting adoption in the market. The biggest risk for me is to try to over optimize and over invest in something that you think is going to work on day one and hope that by month 9 you're going to be a unicorn growing, because that's not the case. I think the portfolio approach shows that the majority of ideas that you have will fail. So again, instead of trying to go for ad hoc innovation and go with your gut and think like, okay, this is the idea that's going to make us millionaire. Like, how can you instead, like with the resources that you have with AI, instead of building faster, how can you test faster, right? And how can you test more things, right? So again, portfolio meaning instead of committing to one project, try 5 different approaches. And with AI, like I guess just to share a few ideas, you can do that much easier, right? In the entrepreneurship process, we used to, I mean, you still have the concept of MVPs, and MVPs are there for you to help you pivot, right? So this idea of actually, being able to create MVPs in seconds is something that you should take advantage of instead of trying to create fully fleshed products in seconds, right? So if you're not sure about like which is your ideal customer profile, before it would have been very difficult, but now you can pop up 5 different landing pages if you wanted to. It doesn't have to be a landing page. It can be an email, right? It can be a sales deck. It can be communication material that you test across 5 different segments before you overcommit to one, right? And you, again, if you had those 5 different segments and you created these 5 different sales decks and you're seeing that there's one vertical that's getting more adoption, you can now, based on data, say, okay, I'm going to create something for this specific ICP, right? So I think that my advice would be that, like, don't try to overcommit on your first idea and instead try to test different approaches.
Great, great advice. Right behind you, especially in marketing. Neil, go ahead.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Diana. I was going to say, my advice to founders would be don't forget that the customer is your best friend. You can ideate a great concept for as long as you want, but proving it's commercially viable is super important. And I think it's exactly to Diana's point, AI helps accelerate that, right? So founders can really use AI to turn what used to be chaos into clarity, and then directly sort of applying that into workflows. But to spend too much time refining, using AI, refining, and not talking to your customer or looking at those 5 use cases, and instead of just thinking about them in the lab and talking to them about with your co-founders, it's important to not, to get to the market and at least have those conversations with your clients, have them test the lightweight MVP, put the email out there, because that feedback is hugely important and often ends up preserving your shareholder equity, because you have a better understanding of how to go to market. AI can accelerate those things, if it's used right. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I agree. I work with founders on this so much, so I absolutely agree. Um, so we're gonna go to the questions. We have a question from Sergio. We have 2 questions from Sergio. For a small but ambitious company building an AI first platform for MSME, in an emerging market, what is the first agentic workflow you'd recommend implementing to create a real business impact quickly? That's a very ambitious question. So first agentic workflow you recommend integrating. Who wants to give a stab at that question? Nobody?
I can go and have a
Andy,
go at that.
Amar? Okay.
Yeah, I can go. I mean, I think the MSME market in emerging markets, you need to have some sort of cash flow agent or some sort of autonomous kind of credit readiness agent that will add value, that can solve that kind of trust and documentation gap that you may probably have, or the access to capital or liquidity issue that you may have. That could be a good high value use case to go after. You know, I mean, one of the ways that you want to go after this is to look at unpicking the workflow first of all, right? Try to understand the workflow. So let's say, for example, for the liquidity agent, to help you with access to capital and liquidity, you should look at building some sort of multi-agent system, right? That's designed to move the MSME from somebody who you couldn't lend because of trustworthiness and those kind of things to a credit ready in real time. And the way you would typically do is you'll have like a multi-agent system platform where you have multi-agents working together to be able to fulfill a workflow. So for example, you may have an agent that does the harvesting, connects the business data sources. You may have an agent that categorizes transactions and builds a real-time like bank standard P&L statement to show your patterns of seasonality and those kind of things. You may have an agent that does the advisor, the proactive kind of advice, right? Acting as your virtual CFO. Instead of waiting for the user to ask, to alert, it basically generates a 30-day microloan application based on verified sales, for example. You may have a multi-agent platform or a multi-agent system that's working together. The key with it all, I think, is having something with high stakes and with versus low friction, right? Those are things that I think would probably do well. Ability to turn kind of data into financial insights or financial signals, that would really help, I think. And then having something that measures the ROI. I think that's the kind of the way you would look at. You would also go with mobile first kind of approach, right? Don't go for dashboards or visual, very complex type of conversational agent or a dashboard and all that, but something that's very, very mobile first. So something that's easily integrated into your WhatsApp or a lightweight mobile app, basically. And think small models, like don't go for the most expensive models, but build the flow and show the value from the flow. So that's what I would say in terms of some tips and guidance.
That's a very ambitious first integration with multi-agents, but I love it. Perfect. Andy, do you
You're
have
gonna
anything?
build it out small, and then
Yeah,
add the kind of complexity to it.
with multiple roles. Perfect. Andy, do you have anything? Did you want to say anything on that one? On the
No, I think you nailed it. Plus, we got to get to you, and I tend to drone on.
Amazing. Okay, then let's go to Michael's questions. Michael, so many questions, and we'll have a question for Michael, and then we'll go to Inga. Let's see. Okay, this is what. Let's see which one. Mhm. What makes a workflow the right first AI? What makes a workflow the right first AI use case, and what usually makes teams pick the wrong one? So what's a Michael, I don't know if it's if we can unmute you. It would be if you want to ask the question yourself, Michael, go ahead. It would be like what's the right use case, a great AI use case, and what would be an AI use case that's not working?
Yeah, exactly. When you're talking about workflows, what are the triggers to how, I love hearing about real world application of this, so if you have examples, that would be wonderful. Just, a time when teams weren't able to kind of implement something and why, obviously I don't want to make the same mistakes. So it's great to learn from somebody else.
Diana?
Yeah, go ahead,
Neil?
Diana, please. No, go ahead, Diana. You can take it first if you'd like.
Yeah, I guess my comment would be that I think the most common mistake is to try to start too big. I think that oftentimes also perhaps like trying to hire an agency to do something for you that you're not sure what it looks like is like a very common problem, right? I think that let's say to give a concrete example, I'm thinking here. I don't know if Neil, you have one in particular that you would like to share, but I think that companies try to do everything at once at the same time, and it's not having a clarity in the workflow process that you're trying to create, what leads to products that you don't actually need. So I think it's they're not adopted. They were based on assumptions that weren't true. So I think that the best case to start is to find, like, I guess this is the what I've seen work is low hanging fruits to start with. Again, mapping how AI can help you do things that you already do easier and faster. Things that might be taking a lot of your time personally, and then based on that experience that you're having of working with the AI, you'll have a much better idea of what you want to do yourself now on a larger scale. So you can speak with, people who understand better, how to create these things, and you can tell them exactly like what you're struggling with, right? Like the things that you're seeing where it's adding value, like what do you want to expand on? Instead of like going with a very generic idea of like I want to like bring AI into my sales process. I don't know, right? That would be my answer. um
Great answer. Neil and then Andy.
Me first, or go
Go,
ahead.
go ahead, Andy. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would say start with a business use case as well. So what is the outcome you're trying to get from this? The features are cool, but if you don't have a clear use case that you're or a goal that you're trying to achieve, it's a pointless lesson. The other thing as a leader or a manager, make sure you understand the process of what's going on. So a lot of times you might have these engineers or team members that are very excited about AI tools and they just want to roll it out. I definitely don't recommend that either. Get involved with the process, understand, what exactly you want to do with AI and how you want to implement it, so you understand the whole process and what's going on, to see if it matches up with your business use case and the strategy that you're trying to achieve. And ultimately the goals you're trying to get out of it. So don't let your team members just bring on AI just for the sake of it because they saw some tool online. Make sure that it fits into your company's overarching goals and strategy.
Great answer. Neil?
I can add something really quick, Michael. Where we see success is early success is often taking tasks that are repeatable, and there's a lot of human fatigue. So simple things that can be repeated over and over again are really good early use cases. What that does in our sort of experience is if you start with a workflow where AI can sort of make that decision or that repeatable decision, one, it learns faster, and two, you can fail safely. So, you're creating an environment where you start to understand how the AI is impacting that workflow. I think, where we see these things fail, and not just in our, you know, I guess to qualify it, when we intersect our, what we do at Levuka, we're often aligning with that client or that partner ahead of time to ensure we have an aligned commercial strategy, right? So we would like to think that if we fail in that case, it's because it wasn't, something was overlooked or it wasn't commercially viable. But if we're looking at AI specifically, I think it fails, and the research shows that it fails, is when people start to, and Amr hit this too, is when people start to engineer the wrong workflow. Like, despite what we think is good, it has to be impactful to the business. So I would say, like, start somewhere you can be confident, something that's repeatable and predictable, gives you a safe place to fail, and, iterate off of that, right? So that the human can sort of, you can take away something that the human hates doing that's repeatable. That's a really good early AI use case that, sort of creates impact.
Like
Yeah.
spreadsheet.
Totally,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I
Or
love that
like,
answer.
a real world example, is we do this for certain verticals with our agentic AI, our voice AI, where we can do everything from, we have an AI agent. I'll give you a couple real world examples really quick because I know people wanted that. We have a company called Just Mobile in Australia that's using our agentic AI. There's 3 people in the company. It's a MVNO, a mobile virtual network operator for phones, for eSIMs. We have 9,000 users on that platform. It's completely run by our AI. So our AI agent is doing the simple task of being able to say, hey, can you give me a plan that would work for my 17-year-old teenager that likes to surf the internet? It pulls up plans, it does the KYC, you upload the client, it integrates with the back end, it fully onboards them, it downloads their eSIM, it loads it on their phone. So the entire business is run off of an agentic AI, right? Other use cases would be like, we have this in automotive, and I mentioned the mortgages earlier, where it may be calling somebody saying for aftercare support, hey, I see you've got a BMW, it's 2 years old, your warranty is about to expire, would you, these are simple things because people don't want to make those calls. Nobody wants to make that phone call, right? And the AI agents, we find actually, what it does is people pick up the phone and they'll say, we see these calls, they'll say, is this AI? And it actually softens the conversation because now they don't have to feel stupid, and they don't feel like they're being hard closed by some guy at the BMW dealership that's just trying to flip their lease early. They can ask questions, they can be inquisitive, they can get answers, and they don't have to, make a decision feeling like they're being pressured. So sometimes, these things can actually de-escalate the tension as well, right? If they're implemented right, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And with all honesty, yeah, I love that. Um, Inga. Inga, do you want to unmute yourself and are you still there and ask the question you threw in the chat?
Sorry, my internet's not very good, so maybe I'll just listen in if you can read it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for being here, by the way. Michael and Inga are our founders, so it's nice that they're here.
Thank you.
So Inga, we built a SaaS platform for enterprise B2B clients. Hold on a second. There. We use some generative AI in our product. Some clients are very of it being in the product. How do you make the generative AI safe for our clients without training the model of privacy? Hold on, let me read it again. So Inga, yeah, of course, you're building a SaaS platform for enterprise B2B clients, and she's using generative AI in the product. And some clients vary of it being the product, how to make generative AI safe so she wants to know how to make generative AI safe for her clients. For example, not training the model, privacy of data, etc. So how can she make generative AI safe for her clients? I don't know if the question's understood or if I want to.
Yeah, I can help out with that if you want, Miguel.
Yeah, I guess it would be how to make a generative AI safe for her clients. She's building a SaaS
Yeah,
platform for enterprise B2B clients.
I think there's 2 sides to this. One is the actual platform itself in terms of how are you handling, like what kind of guardrails have you got inside the platform to protect the data, so the data is not inherently fed into the LLM, or there's not retraining of there's no usage of the data there's actually no usage of it. And the second thing is that actually the terms of service, right? In terms of your terms of service and your DPA, your data processing agreements, you need to make them very, very clear to the client or to the users of the platform that there is zero customer data that's being used to train, retrain, or fine tune any of the models that they're using, if they're using any of the models. So you've got to make sure that you've got a very good holistic, look at it internally. I don't know like how your platform is architected from under the hood, but you need to make sure that's not the case, and then make sure these terms of services are very, very clear and obvious to your clients or to your users who are using the platform. And also, if you are using any models in the background, make sure you use the enterprise version. I mean, there's so many times when I run sessions with clients and customers, and I tell them that there's a difference between using a consumer product and an enterprise product. The difference is that in a consumer product, you are the product. You are almost the product. So they could potentially use that data to retrain those models. But in an enterprise world, they have some terms of services and some guarantees that they can give you, which means that they cannot use your data to retrain their models. So know the difference between. And then make sure that you have like there's a default and there's a badge in your UI that says that your data remains yours. So you need to make that very obvious to your users. So that's the big thing in there. And then again, the other thing is about be visible, give them a way to be very visible in terms of the data and the kind of human in the loop side of things, guardrail that you put in place. So use pre-processing layer that automatically detects any PII or anything like that before it hits the LLM, if you're using again LLMs. So those are the kind of things I would think about to make it more safe and secure.
Thank you. These are great suggestions. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
Posted a couple software platforms that might run automated compliance tests for you, like Sprinto, SecureFrame, and Hey Data. Check those ones out too. They might help you with some of this too, just to clarify.
Do you want to go over some of these, Andy? SecureFrame or Sprinto, like these tools?
Yeah, I haven't used them in particular, but I've talked to the seniors at the companies, and they're product partners with us. Their names come up a lot, and they're really popular products. Compliance obviously is a really hot topic right now, hence your question. But these are some of the top products I've seen in the marketplace covering compliance. So definitely check out those products. Go to their websites. I think if you look up Hey Data, SecureFrame, I put them in the chat there. Feel free to Google those products and see which one's a good fit for you.
Oh, fantastic. Will do. Thank you.
Michaela, if I may, I wanted to just add one thing to that on top of what Amar was saying. I think it's important to remember that these AI models don't need to be perfect, right? Especially when we're building data, driven models like this with some compliance on an enterprise level. They do need to be auditable, right? So that becomes key. Like, sometimes, you don't need to make it perfect. You just need to make it auditable. And there's different ways to do this, as Amar was sharing as well, right? Like inference models and things like that. There's ways to build this. And I can totally appreciate there's many tools out there, but when you're truly trying to build sort of enterprise level solutions, sometimes it's important to architect them like a commercial stack, right? We have, for example, like we have our own hybrid engine and LLM that we have the IP on, and now we can sort of constrain and train that model for enterprise applications, or silo sort of approaches around how that data is used or trained, or what's happening for specific use cases. And that's not always viable for every project, but sometimes it's important when you're actually trying to tackle sort of a large enterprise use case, right? To think about a commercial structure, so it's not just bolting on tool on top of tool.
Yeah, that's great. And are there any companies that could do that? I mean, I think audit is
We
great.
do it. We do it. We build
Fantastic.
enterprise. Yeah, we build venture tech, right? So we can do everything from financial models. We build AI models. We own that LLM and hybrid engine. My co-founder, Sean, was the founder of a company called Cars Fast. They were early adopters in AI. About 4 years ago, they started building it into their model. He exited about a year ago, just less than a year ago. That company scaled to a $250 million valuation in 4 years. And on his exit, we retained the IP for our LLM and hybrid engine. So we have that as part of our ecosystem, as well as developers both in AI and blockchain on staff. So we take an approach where we would, venture engineer these types of projects with partners. Sometimes we come in at a later stage, and we can be everything from just a outsourced tech team to actually building the commercial narrative. And then we do stuff, on a higher scale with capital markets and publicly traded companies as well. So but that's not to shy away from early stage, right? Sometimes there's great early stage businesses that we can accelerate. So we're not picky, right? We're about dealing with good founders and good projects. It's not always about how big they are at this very moment.
Yeah, that's great. No, I was more interested in these sort of automated compliance tools. I mean, I think it's very important to continually update and look and stay on top of compliance, and especially when it comes to only data and privacy and all that stuff. So,
especially if you're doing business in Europe, EU AI
we are,
right,
yes,
it's very stringent, and you need to be thinking about how to protect yourself, because there's a 7%, I think, fine for any breaches and anything like that. You just gotta be make sure you cover yourself, because there are things in there, like, for example, if you're using AI, you've got to tell them that you're using AI. Like, you've got to tell the user that you're using AI, for example. So there is some, but there are also things that they've set up for startups that you should know as well, that they have set up sandboxes where regulators can give you like a little bit more leniency if you're a startup. So there's also those things too that you can look into. But
that's
just
interesting.
Yeah, great question. And we're gonna jump in. I'm gonna throw in 2 more questions, and then we're gonna wrap up because we've already extended. And thank you for all. You guys are incredible panelists, and I'm just so happy that you've all come together for this, because I'm learning so much, and I'm sure that our audience will also surely learn once it's up on YouTube too. So you guys are gonna echo through the 2026. So I think this is an interesting question from Michael. Rather than treating human in the loop as a safety fallback, how should teams explicitly design for human judgment as a first-class system constraint, especially in regulated or high-risk domains like education, healthcare, or content moderation? So I love this because, Michael, well, I brought his example of what he's building in the ed tech. So who wants to answer? If you want, I can read it again, or I can send it over in the chat. You guys want me to read the question again, or Neil, are you speaking?
I was just going to say, if you don't mind just reading it again, that'd be good.
So rather than treating human in the loop as a safety fallback, how should teams explicitly design for human judgment as a first-class system constraint, especially in regulated or high-risk domains like education, healthcare, or content moderation? So I'm guessing, what we were talking about, critical thinking. How should we, train systems to do this?
So I think there needs to be a shift from more kind of participation to like structural priority with human in the loop, right? We need to bring in the human in the loop, kind of more of a judgment root node kind of architecture. Now, the thing is, instead of the AI acting as the, asking for thumbs up or ask for something for a human in the loop to come in, the AI generates the plan and the rationale, but the authority to execute is a separate, non-bypassable human gate. That's what needs to be, I think, implemented, right, or be put into practice. So, for example, in the healthcare domain, let's say you're doing some diagnostic, or you're getting some augmentation with some diagnostics. The actual execution of that prescription or for that program needs to be controlled by a human, right? I think that needs to happen. I think that definitely needs to happen, because I think the systems are going to get so good that the autonomous agent is coming, and I think we're not too far away from that type of kind of capability. So you've got to still have the human in the loop. But I think the human in the loop then shifts to more in the execution phase of whether you want to execute an action or not. And so I think that's really important. I think that's going to happen. You should also, I think, look at using confidential kind of thresholds, understanding what the threshold or what the threat of a specific system looks like, right? So you turn the human into more of a strategic arbiter rather than a data entry clerk, right? So you're not watching the AI work anymore. You're waiting for the AI to identify a highly ambiguous moment that will require the human value judgment in there. And I think for all of this to happen properly, we need traceability, we need auditability, we need traceability for this to happen. So I think that's the way you got to think about this for this whole human in the loop, the way it's gonna kind of evolve and move forward. That's just my 2 cents on it.
Incredible. Great answer.
That's a great answer. Thank you. I appreciate it, Amar.
You're welcome.
If I may add something maybe on what Amar has just mentioned, because I think the human in the loop is just, for the final decision making, because the AI model, we're gonna suggest, decisions, and with our the human in the loop will take the final decision. So we have like a sort of like feedback mechanism, just like just a simple thumbs up or thumbs down. If it's thumbs up, we're gonna acknowledge, the model decision, and we're gonna just, send him that thumbs up in order, to it's like a reward, to the system. Other than that, if the decision was wrong, was classified wrongly, we're gonna get the thumbs down, and it's gonna get addressed accordingly. And when it comes to the tracing, when it comes, to the LLMs and the RAG architecture systems, many cases they tend, to treat it as a black box model. They just know the input and the output. They don't know exactly what's happening inside, that's what's happening under the hood. Every, I would say, agent decision, every tool call, every, I would say, token consumption, latency, cost per query has to be traced and monitored. Langsmith is a great tool that have the opportunity to use for the last few months. Langfuse as well, so that we can debug the system easily. We can just, test and validate. We can monitor the system, not just, getting the input output, but we know exactly what's happening in the system so that we can address every potential issue when it occurs immediately. I don't know if it answers your question.
Well, I think it's a great question, to be honest with you. It's a great question, because I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to be shifted from the traditional human in the loop to becoming more proactive, more structural, more transparent. So I think it's a great question.
Yeah, I really like the idea of kind of the auditability, that really makes sense, to have, to be able to see what's going on kind of behind the things, and maybe get some kind of information to make, decisions once it's completed, to understand how the process.
Absolutely. I think you need that capability. But I think when I was saying about, what we do, I mean, the way the system is set up at the moment is that you have a human that just approves stuff, or that human that kind of, you see the final answer and you say yes, no, good enough, or whatever. But I think you need to get to a stage where the human sees the rationale and the plan behind it. So that's where the transparency and the auditability should come in. That's where it needs to go to. the transparency from opaque to transparent. It needs to go from efficiency goals, i.e. maximum speed, to effectiveness, maximize accountability and trust. It needs to go from optional to structure, like we were saying. The system is dormant without human input, right? And it needs to go from reactive, the human fixing the AI mistakes, to proactive, human authorizing the AI execution. I think those are the first class constraints that we should be thinking about going forward.
Yeah,
Great.
I agree. I was just going to add, sorry, Michaela, I agree with
Okay.
everything Amr just said. You know, I think that I would say, Michael, that in these sort of high risk or regulated domains, you know, human judgment shouldn't be sort of the safety fallback. It should be part of the design constraint, right? So just to add to what Amr was saying, you know, I think often we think about the human being the last resort, the fallback, all of those things, right, on these decision making. I think in areas like education or healthcare or the verticals that you sort of mentioned, judgment is the product, right? So like when we just to add to what Amr was saying, because I think it's absolutely spot on, right? So when judgment becomes the product, I think like a first class system is regulated or designed because we're engineering where the judgment sits, right? Instead of thinking like, oh, if it fails, what will the human do to intersect where it fails? We're saying these are constraints, and by the nature of rules in general, in any form or fashion, they're to constrain power. So we don't want to give too much power to anything within those highly regulated industries because we have to constrain where the power is and we have to engineer where that human sits within that framework. So I think, yeah, sorry, hopefully that adds something to it, but just wanted to
Yeah.
highlight that.
No, yeah, and it's a very important question that we need to start thinking about, like all of us.
Well, thank you,
So
everybody.
great. Thank you guys. Yeah, thank you, Michael, for your questions, and thank you all. We're gonna answer this last question, and then I'll be wrapping up. I also want to just really quickly mention that our founders are graduating February 4th next week. So, and you're all invited to come. I'm gonna throw in the link. Because I mean, I'm just so proud of all of them and how far we've come together. And it's been a tough one, and all these sessions are, you know, to ensure that more founders also join our cohort and that anybody listening can benefit and integrate AI mindfully. So the last question is from Omolo. Omolo, do you want to unmute yourself and ask, or do you want me to ask for you if you're there? Let's see if I find you. If not, I can just throw it like just ask you guys. So what industry would benefit the most in agentic workflow that a solo founder should be focusing on? It's a very hard question. But what industry do you guys see the most potential in agentic workflow integration? And he's based out in the US.
And
Very
I think
subjective.
a lot of repeated high touch points with customers, probably a lot of data involved too. That AI would be really good at crunching the data. Also, from a customer facing standpoint, handling a lot of customer queries. I would think maybe healthcare would be a good one. Maybe insurance, maybe financial services as well. Businesses that, you know, interact with customers a lot and deal with a lot of data. Of course, you got to worry about the compliance stuff too, which I mentioned a couple of platforms that could help with that earlier. But those would be three industries I'd probably target.
Perfect. Great insight.
You know,
And
I,
yeah,
I was just going to say, because you want to focus on the stuff that I think Neil mentioned as well earlier on, and also Andy just mentioned about data heavy aspect. But I think if you're solo, you want to go after the, what do they call them, the white collar type of industries out there, like the law firms, specialized medical practices,
Knowledge
accounting,
workers.
tax workers. Like you want to try to go there and say, look, you know, these guys are like they have high transaction value, right? So they make good money, and so you want to go and say to them, like, you know, what would it mean if I could save you, I don't know, 5 hours or 4 hours in a day from doing some admin tasks that you can automate, using AI, for example, right? So you pick a specific use case, you show some impact with reducing some time for admin tasks or something on these high value, high transaction value kind of industries, and you make a gain in there as a solo, like a kind of solo, as you're saying, as a solo freelance, or how are you going to go in. So I think I would target something like that. That could be quite interesting. And then give me a shout if you need any help with that afterwards.
Yeah,
I'll
and
share your link. We shared your LinkedIn, but you guys are free to share again, just in case anybody wants to connect.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. I just think that if you're a solo entrepreneur, if you want to focus, but I would, because there is so much stuff to do in those industries, and those are ripe right now. Honestly, even from a bigger perspective, going to even big in something that we could discuss, Neil, afterwards at some point as well. But I think those industries, the law firms, the accountants, the medical, the high transaction value industries that are out there, they are ripe for change right now.
Yeah, they are.
In a specific use case and going on automating and saving 4 or 5 hours or something, it's big value.
Just a quick comment on your question. I think as a solo founder, I think what that means is you're limited in sort of certain resources, right? And so I would sort of caution, don't get allured by the biggest market. Don't just focus on things like a TAM. I would think about where you solve things like a coordination problem and where there's clear boundaries, right? So if you have sort of clear judgment boundaries, clear regulatory structure, and you see a coordination problem, AI is really good at that. I think Yasser mentioned it earlier, pattern recognition and solving things like that. So if I had sort of limited bandwidth or resources, that's probably where I would focus, is where there's like clear regulatory structure and there's a big coordination problem. And I think that is something that's very solvable. So at a high level, that would be my 2 cents.
Great advice. Great advice. And yeah, I agree. I used to work for a legal SaaS company, and there's a big one. There's a big opportunity there too. They're keeping track and patterns and lots of automating these like very repetitive workflows too. So thank you all. It's been incredible. Like I've learned so much, and this panel is amazing. And the questions were great too. So like most of the questions at the end were so much better than mine. So I think we've touched so many points from governance to workflow integration to tools that founders can use. Just keeping critical human-centric thinking at the core. EdTech, we've gone through all of it. So I hope that this session was very useful for all that are listening right now in the present time, in the present tense. And as I said, this will become an echo for 2026 that I hope that other founders can access, and not just founders, but all thought leaders or anybody that is thinking of integrating workflows mindfully. And I invite you all to follow our panelists on LinkedIn, to follow Founder Institute Caribbean, and to learn more from us. And one last thing I'm going to share really quick, our graduation coming up tomorrow. Here it is. So not tomorrow, sorry, next week. I don't know where I'm standing. So this will be next week, February 4th, and we're going to have Neil Charles speak and Kevin Jorovich from Hubble. And yeah, everybody's welcome to come. I'm going to send a link. And yeah, and I also want to thank our team for sticking around for every session, for every event, for being there for us. And yeah, you guys, Diana's like applauding because she knows that these can take a while. So yeah, thank you all. Thank you so much. We'll be closing out the session. And yeah, I'm just so grateful for your time, for your energy, and for your thought remarks. Thank you so much.
Likewise, Mika. Thank you very
Great
much.
night,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
Good
Thank you,
night.
Andy. Bye, everybody.